Yeah, it says your bandwidth is low.
Yeah. Hi all, welcome back to our Science Leadership Workshop program. And this is going to be the first session of Young Science Leaders. You know, the Orange Young Science Leaders special program. You might have seen that in our schedule. We have several young science leaders we are going to feature, especially in the later in the day. So today, I'm really privileged to have one of the promising young science leader of the country, Mrs. Subhra Priyadarshini, with us. Subhra is a very well-known writer and science journalist, and she's involved with very prestigious the magazines, and she's now the chief editor of the Nature India and Springer Nature, two of the very well-known science journals. So Springer Nature, you might know that many of us have papers in it, and Nature India is a very well-known nature group, the news website and blog as well. So it features regularly the news about India. So if you haven't, I suggest you all go check out. They're doing a fantastic work. So Subhra has been working with different review and program committee member, World Conference of the Science Journalists in 2018 and 19, as well as in 2015 to 17, 2 years, and 18, 19, another year as well. She is the winner of the prestigious Kavli Prize of Media, and she got so many different prestigious scholarships, including South Asia Climate Change Media Excellence Award, Robert Bosch Fellowship, IREX UNESCO Global Forum Award, CCAFS PSA Media Fellowship, BBC World Service Trust Award, very prestigious award. And she had been working as a science editor for quite some time with Down to Earth. You know, we all know that how the environmental magazine Down to Earth in 2007, and she had been working as a special correspondent with The Telegraph from 2006 to 7, and senior reporter, Press Trust of India. So please join me to welcome our chief guest and the speaker, the first speaker of the day, the first speaker of our Young Science Leader program. And along with me, we have a Dr. Thanya MS, another young science leader indeed. She is from our Central University of Punjab. Dr. Thanya, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Felix. A very warm welcome to Mrs. Subhra Priyadarshini, the Chief Editor, Nature, Nature, as well as this Nature India. So we are waiting to listen to you, ma'am. She's the right person to discuss the relation between the science and the media. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dhanya. Thank you, Felix. Thanks to all the science academies and the Indian National Young Academy of Sciences for having me here at the Science Leadership Workshop. I may not be the ideal candidate, though, for being called a science leader in the true sense of the term. I understand that there are over 20,000 registrants for this workshop series, and that is an unbelievable number. Of course, puts a lot of pressure on speakers, novice speakers like me, who are perpetually struck by the imposter syndrome. I'm happy that you have so well harnessed what can perhaps be called the only positive outcome of COVID-19, the full potential of this vast resource called the World Wide Web. So when people ask me what challenges I'm facing at work by not being able to meet people in person during this time, I can only say that everybody has only become more generous with their time, despite the immense demands on their time during this crisis. So kudos to INEAS really for truly maximizing this opportunity for the scientific community of this country, young science leaders of this country. Uh, Felix has actually asked me to talk a bit about myself and my journey so far as a professional. So, before telling you what or who I am, let me begin by telling you what I am not, which will give you a fair idea of why I'm saying I'm eminently unsuitable to be speaking to you. Instead, it is all of you who I should be hearing from and learning from. And that's precisely what I do for a living anyway. And that's also the reason I will not have a longish talk. I'd rather have more interaction time than speaking one way on my own. Okay, so what I am not. My name is not prefixed with a doctor, which tells you I don't have a PhD or a degree in medicine, unlike most of today's eminent audience. It is well-meaning friends like Felix who honor me with a doctorate from time to time, but please ignore that. The idea, perhaps, and rightly so, is that if you are knowledgeable and you sound convincing, you must be a doctor. I claim neither to be knowledgeable nor convincing, and whatever I'm going to discuss today, you might already know better than me. So, I'm also not a scientist or a science administrator. I left science after graduation, in which I did in zoology, and went into other, as I was telling Felix before, of academics, primarily personnel management, law, journalism, and the like. Whatever I know of science has actually been through association with scientists like yourselves. And of course, a deep passion to understand its intricate granularity, its unforgiving rigor, its inevitable evolution. And all of that really excites me about science. My passion, and gratefully enough, my profession, has been science communication for the most part, in the form of science journalism. Science journalism is largely informed by all of you, the scientific community, so that people like us can inform many, many more. Most part of my professional life has also been as the chief editor of Nature India, before which I have had a healthy stint with a handful of news organizations of this country and a short stint at the Observer in London. I began my career as a journalist with a small newspaper while I was still studying at the university. I would attend classes in the day and do a night shift with the news bureau. During class breaks, I would sneak out on my two-wheeler to chase stories I was investigating and write them for the next day's edition at night. The pay was peanuts, but the adrenaline rush and the passion about writing, those were priceless. And that still continues to be one of my main drivers in science journalism. I joined the news agency Press Trust of India, as Felix said earlier, under the formidable leadership of Dr. K.S. Jayaraman, known for mentoring the best science journalists of this country. He still writes for Nature India. A bunch of us actually got together recently to publish his life's story, edited by Dinesh Sharma, one of our former colleagues. It's called Raising Hackles. I urge you all to have a look on the internet for the book, Raising Hackles. It'll give you a glimpse into a lifetime of science journalism by Dr. K.S. Jayaraman and what many of his mentees actually think of him. Whatever I learned in the craft of science and investigative journalism was actually under Dr. Jayaraman during my stint at PTI, where we broke a series of stories, muckraking stories. It was, from the lack of stringent regulations governing blood banks to piecing together the mystery behind an optical flare that was dubbed as the Big Bang 2, which baffled cosmologists world over by releasing several hundred times more energy than the supernova explosion. There were stories of trials and tribulations of scientists. For example, one behind the development of the reversible male contraceptive, a biomedical engineer that got me to explore the human side of scientists like yourselves. And we continue to do that at Nature India even now. One of the areas we are passionate about reporting is the human side of science and scientists. So besides these routine stories of discoveries, breakthroughs, myth busting, which PTI was the only one to dedicatedly pursue for long years, we also investigated the alarming use of pesticides in India for the first time, the country's failure in creating a robust global front on climate change during that time, the growing illegal trade in wildlife in the northeast of India, the dipping groundwater tables across India, the debate around India's first case of a surrogate child or a single father, an Indian zoologist's search for life in Antarctic, and several such interesting stories, which are close to my heart even today. Uh, there were some amusing human interest stories too. For instance, I'll name a few. Once we traced the last pictures of Rabindranath Tagore's stolen Nobel medallion in a filmmaker's archives. And that was a very, very unique story for a science journalist to do. Even the major disaster coverages that I had, I was deputed to covering the Orissa super cyclone in 1999 during my stint in PTI and the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004. I was looking for science slanted stories in the hundreds of stories that these catastrophic events would produce around then. And so science has been, something that I was passionate about since early on. At Nature India, my second biggest professional stint, we have similarly been telling hundreds of stories from around India's labs, India's science, its science policy, ever since 2007 when we launched Nature India, breaking new ground, creating debates and discussions, impacting policy of this country. But having said all of that, no, I'm not that archaic yet. I'm surely from the old school of journalism, though, where you can call a spade through your pen or now your keyboard and need not get unduly uncivil or overtly aggressive or call each other names on social media. And many old school values are really not all that bad, coming to think of it, having navigated the public space and science communication space for more than 2 decades now. I still think civil conversations and arguments have their place under the sun, and kindness and politeness are not dead values, especially in times when everyone is so stressed out and you never know which small, kind gesture might actually change another human being's life. So, well, after this very brief philosophical introduction, if you will, to myself, let me then come to the core of what I wish to discuss with you today. And that is science communication and why that may be important, especially in the lessons one has learned living through a pandemic of a lifetime for all of us. For the first time, I think, in our collective memories, the entire human race is looking up to science for solutions. It's not the gods, it's not astrology, it's not quackery, it's science. People are genuinely looking up to science to find a drug or a vaccine that will end the rampage of the novel coronavirus across the world. If this is not the time to seize the opportunity and bolster public trust in science, I don't know when it will be. If this is not the time to take action against pseudoscience and misinformation by being armed with science, I don't know when a better opportunity will present itself. If post-truth does not make you squirm into taking action as a scientist living in this pandemic, I don't know what will. And yes, that last one was actually deliberately meant to set you thinking, you, all the science leaders of tomorrow. So, why do we need to communicate our science to the masses? The question that we are all wanting to answer through this talk today. Reason number one, as it stands today, is to be able to scotch pseudoscience, anti-science, fake science, misinformation, whatever you may like to call it. A part of the scientific community of this country has actually risen up to the occasion, and I know a lot of people in INYAS have actually been doing a lot of work around scotching pseudoscience and mandated themselves to such a task. That's laudable, but may not be enough. So each one of us has to really create that space around us of building trust in science. And of course, informing the public of the evolving nature of science, its questioning disposition, its rigor, how science is done. This is the time, and it's as good as any, and I think better than any, for us to sort of advocate for this heavily. Reason number two, and let's talk about a situation where there's no pandemic anymore. We have transitioned into a world where, of course, SARS-CoV-2 is not around. That is bound to happen sometime or the other. Why would you want to then communicate your science? You want to anyway inform the public about your science. You want to anyway raise awareness of your own personal discipline and, of course, your institute of your own personal profile. You, of course, want to inspire the next generation of researchers, just as someone or something might have inspired you to come into science. Think about it deeper, and you will certainly find some answers to that. Now, let me come to the practical benefits of what happens when you start thinking in terms of becoming more communicative about your science or science in general. You are developing a new, much needed skill, essential in this age for many, many reasons. You are raising your personal and institutional profile. You are increasing the networking and funding to your science, a part of which actually comes with visibility and application of your science. And in essence, you are increasing the impact of your work. Now you may ask me, how can actually you go about doing all of this? Some of the more traditional ways, tested ways, if you will, that people have been doing this successfully are through blogs, social media, multimedia, such as podcasts and videos. There's this outreach activities and public engagement that many of you are already engaged in. That really brings you into the core of what science communication with the public directly is. Writing popular science pieces or opinion pieces or commentaries or letters to the editors or even book chapters or books. Many of you are already doing these successfully in newspapers, in magazines, in popular science websites, etc. Actually using your institution's mechanism for press releases or press appearances. That's also another way you can raise your profile, your institute's profile, and probably also get directly in the way of into science communication, as it were. But you can always find more creative and effective ways of reaching more people than just these number of tested ways. For example, this workshop, this webinar, it's reaching so many people. I'm told more than 20,000 people registered for these sessions, and that's incredible. So harnessing the potential of these platforms. We can elaborate on any of these methods and means at the end of the session when we have questions and answer, and I'm happy to take as many questions as the time allows. So I'll just take a few moments to talk to you about this powerful communication tool that social media is, something that has become an inseparable part of our lives. Though you may know more than I know, and probably already do um, know about this necessary evil in our lives. As we learn every day on social media, what are the things that truly benefit us and others around us? What is it that really gets us the eyeballs? What is it that gets shared, if you will, in social media parlance? It is the breaking and contextual stories, something that is current or is in the context of the audience, something that your everyday happenings tell you. If you are a celebrity or somebody who many people follow, then your everyday happenings are also stories that people want to follow. Something that is from your heart. Science news articles actually figure at the top of this list, from the heart kind of stories, followed by history, drama, or something that has been hard fought for or untold yet, things like that. Something that is visual. Can people actually see your story? Can people actually see what you want to say? That actually makes a lot of currency on social media. Is it of practical value to people around you, or people who follow you, or people who you follow, sort of? Is this information useful to them? And of course, I can't advocate enough the power of stories. Stories are fundamentally about our social interaction on a daily basis, on our science, on how we are doing our science, on the hidden stories behind how we get to our results, our glowing results, or our inaccurate results, or our failures, whatever. Stories are really central to human beings. Everybody loves a good story, and so they get shared more than anything else. What doesn't click that well on social media is politics. There's always this binary. People quickly segregate into groups, and there's already a lot of back and forth on political stories or messages, and essentially no good happens at the end of it, apart from you losing hours of social media time or your own time uh, in an inconsequential debate. Negativity of any sort, that is not going to yield anything on social media. And that's why you can see social media is full of happy stories, happy pictures, happy this, happy that. And we have had Professor Ashutosh Sharma this morning talk about this at length during his inaugural talk, about how negativity really doesn't get you anywhere on social media. Careless or casual posts on professional matters, that is really actually an antithesis to what you should be doing on social media. It can actually mar your career instead of making the most of it. Mindless forwards, that may say, forwarded as received, or I don't know what this, that's not really going to get you anywhere. Another kind of thing that doesn't get really shared too much or makes too much of an impact on social media is bragging. I did that, this is my certificate for this workshop, or this is what I attended, I met this and this, I'm at so-and-so celebrity, and bragging, or its new variation that is now called humble bragging. I'm humble to do this, humble to be in the, in the company of so many greats, etc. And I'm quoting one of my friends here who's sort of become a social media expert now. Remember the principle, I have never been hurt by what I have never said. And so that is something that you might want to keep in mind. And again, I quote him when I say the essential new age mantra in communication. Earlier, it was publish or perish. Then it became post or perish. And now I think it is pause, post, or perish. So I think we need to just keep certain things in mind when we're communicating, not just our science, anything about ourselves to a wider media. And I think I'll stop there and take questions. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for having me over for this important conversation.
Over to Dr. Dhanya.
Thank you, Mrs. Actually, sorry for writing doctor, but as you told, this knowledge matters a lot. And in this short period of time, I hope our participants and the young science leaders and the future science leaders gained a lot from your experience. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for a wonderful motivational speech.
For
so
giving me
you
this,
have within this short period of time, you have explained the importance of science communication. You have given the reasons for the what is the role of the science communication and what are the parts of this communication. And what I say, the mantra which you have told us, from the evolution, you can say, the up to the perish is stable there, but the way to perish is different. And in this time of this pandemic period, we have came across many fake news, forwarded messages and all. So our students, scholars, and these young science leaders have to be knowledgeable about what is right and what is wrong, and how they will communicate with others for a better future. So we are going to start with the question. We'll take the questions, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead, Dhanya.
Yeah. So we are having one. Yeah. There is one question from Ram Kumar Sharma from Ranji. He is asking why only a few researchers are doing SciComm, science communication. What stops others from this communication? Ma'am?
Yeah. I think one of the reasons that I know that many scientists do not come up, and this has come up very regularly in my interaction with young and old scientists. I shouldn't say old, younger and more young scientists and youngest scientists. The fact that, people think it might result in a waste of time or something that doesn't translate to something tangible, or also, their peers might think less of them. Their peers might think they're doing this for becoming celebrities. Many times it takes a lot of time away from their core activity, so-called core activity of doing their science, and it results in people and scientists thinking that it is a secondary activity. Really, I would urge more and more scientists to think of it as not as an alternate activity, but as one of the lead activities that all of us have to do in our regular day-to-day lives as professionals. It's not just scientists, it's for everybody who's aspiring to be a leader in any field, any professional field. Effective communication is a way to really climbing that ladder successfully, more easily and fast. So I think people who are thinking in those terms should really rethink their strategies about science communication.
Yeah,
Okay, ma'am.
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. It was really wonderful talk. I totally enjoyed from the beginning till the end. You spoke so many things, including the social media and the how to leverage social media for science communication. And it was really amazing talk, I tell you. So I just want to share with you that we also have the participants, this 20,000 participants. We are actually a group. We have a Facebook group of all these participants for professional networking. So I will send you an invite. So please join it and join in our discussions over there as well. So we have already started up that matter. Now we have a question. Let me pick up a question from Deep from Bangalore. His question is that in these times of COVID-19, fake news and conspiracy theories are spreading at much faster rate than the virus itself. For example, people are so much enthusiastic for Chinese conspiracy while outrightly disregarding government rules on wearing masks and physical distancing. How to increase public trust of sciences and scientists, in your opinion?
Yeah, very good question actually. And for all the webinars during the COVID time that I have attended, I don't think I've got a more popular question than conspiracy theories and fake news. This has been really the core of much of what I've been speaking through the COVID-19 times. I'm happy to take that question again and explain what really goes behind conspiracy theories. You'll be surprised to really understand this mechanism by which way the fake news gets itself transmitted much faster than the virus, as has been pointed out, and much faster than science itself, uh, or scientists who are countering these theories. You cannot look at countering each and every fake news story. The moment you have countered one, there are 10 others who have raised their ugly heads around social media channels, on WhatsApp, on Twitter, or whatever you will. So while I might not have a very direct answer to how to go about it, I can certainly tell you that even a handful of people working to squash these stories over time will get us somewhere. If not kill these stories totally or wipe them away from our collective memories. One way of dealing with this is to talk about, as I said during my talk, the evolution of science. We always keep saying, as scientists or as science communicators, we keep saying science has this evidence, so you got to believe it. Science has the backbone of evidence, so you better believe it. That tone actually puts off a lot of people who may not still have trust in science. So public trust in science will not be built if we push science aggressively like that. If we are to tell them, look here, science is as valuable as your own theories about these fake stories. So science is evolving, not have the same evidence. And we will bring to you whatever is the latest. And as of now, around the world, scientists working on this particular problem on SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 have this to tell us. This to tell us about the virus's, say, spike proteins, or this to tell us about how the virus infects, or this to tell us about masks, how to wear them, etc. And so let's give them the evolution of science rather than giving them a hard and fast, no, you have to believe this kind of a theory. I think that would be way more easier for us to make people understand that science is also evolving just like the virus is, and our knowledge about it is.
Over to Dr. Dhanya.
Yes, ma'am. We have another question from Satish Kumar Mariappan. He just want to know what are the reasons for a failure to write a good science stories by most of our researchers.
That's again a wonderful question. And, the number one reason I would think is because, I mean, there are several reasons, but I think I'll just pick up one or two, which are primary. The reason that we think in terms of scientific lingo or jargons is one of the primary reasons why scientists cannot translate what happens in our labs into something that more and more people can relate to, So, as we were taught in journalism school, writing a simple sentence in English is the toughest job. We always embellish our English with either adjectives or flowery language or scientific jargons, or write a sentence that starts somewhere, ends somewhere, and has something in between, and a number of stories to tell in just one sentence. So I would think that the difficulty in thinking in terms of simple language is something that most of us need to, even seasoned writers like myself, actually struggle to write simple English many times. And so most of us struggle to overcome that barrier of writing and thinking simply in terms of how a 10th grade student might understand, or your grandma might understand that science or that language. That's actually a classic reference to give in science communication, a 10th grader or your grandma. And that is one reason why many people are not successfully able to translate their science. The number two reason I would think why scientists do not become, oh, I would say do not, many of them do, why it is very, it's a challenge for scientists to become successful writers is also because a lot of their time is invested in what they do. So the worldview that one would knew, and I think one of the previous speakers during the day referred to the interdisciplinarity of science and how it opens up the world for us. So the worldview that we would need to write a popular piece, to embellish it with real life examples from other spheres of life, other disciplines of life, for instance, from cricket, an analogy from Bollywood, or an analogy from, say, for a neuroscientist, an analogy from astrophysics, for instance, to bring in all those perspectives into our narrative is also a challenge that many scientists feel they are deep rooted into just their area of work or discipline, and so they find it difficult to overcome that challenge many times. I would think some of the reasons are these.
Yes, ma'am. With this, you have explained there are many participants who asked the how to communicate with the rural people, remote areas. All these you have explained. If even a 10th grade person can understand, that means you are a success in your scientific communication. Is it, ma'am? Yeah. Can we go for the next question, ma'am?
Yes, sure. I just wanted to add that,
Yeah.
when you say rural communication,
Mhm.
and I constantly have these dialogues with the science administrators of this country, many of whom are on your workshops panel, about communicating science in regional languages and communicating science through radio. These are really some of the channels we are missing in this country, and I'm very passionate about doing those forms of communications as well, where we can reach more and more people by translating our scientific material or communication material into languages that reach more people, and media, that is radio, which reaches far more people than television or the internet or radio. So yes, for rural communities, I think that really is one of the ways to reach them.
Yeah, and one of our participants, Vishaka Sen, she just want to know, during this pandemic, we are more into this internet, social medias, and other all. How it's little bit hampering the health, eyesight, and all psychological as well as physiological. So just she wants some advice from you, how to overcome these things.
Yeah, I mean, social media has had tremendous impact on our lives in the last 1 decade. We all know that. And it's not just during the pandemic. Of course, the pandemic has actually exasperated many of us, and it has really multiplied the bad effects, if you will, of social media on our mental and physical well-being. Um, but if you are practicing something that I call social media detox from time to time, uh, I think you can escape the ill effects of social media. Frankly speaking, and I tell this to many of my friends, if I were not in this profession, I would probably be far away from Twitter, far more regulated in terms of how you. Twitter has far more number of imponderables, and people can actually come and troll you and say things about you, pull you down, create a lot of negativity for you. And so, yes, how to escape all of this is, I think, limit your social media time, even if it's a pandemic or not. Uh, uh, Follow people who make sense, freely block people who do not make sense or who are sort of creating panic or creating problems in your psychological well-being. Um, Try to delineate, try to be disenchanted by what these people have to say. Try to be not so affected by them. I mean, I can just say what anybody else can tell you about being away from social media from time to time. I know of a lot of psychologists who have written for us during the pandemic and who have preached how to keep away from even news media, not just social media. For instance, if newspapers and news channels are creating panic for you or disturbing you with the numbers or say scary reports, it's not a bad idea to step away for a bit. That should really keep your mental health, in some sort of a balance.
Okay. Another question from the
Excellent.
yes, sir, please.
Yeah, I just want to add that because madam, you were discussing about the importance of the regional language communication. Just before a while ago, Professor Gagandeep Kang emphasized the same point, and I was also part of this anniversary general body meeting of the INSA that was held in Goa, where Professor Chandrima Saha also emphasized the same point. Then she is the first woman. She is the first woman. One second. Yeah, woman, the president of International Science Academy. So she said that it's going to be a priority task for the communication in the regional languages. So I just want to add that point here. And then let me pick up one question here by Arun Kumar Verma. Have you ever felt gender inequality in the media industry, especially in science journalism, and how it is paved to your path to such an important leading role? Yeah.
I missed the last bit of your question,
The
Felix.
last question is how it paved your path to such an important leading role. So he's guessing that you already faced it, but it might not be the truth. Yeah. Yeah.
That is the truth, of course. All of us know. And I wouldn't say gender inequality, but we certainly lack the idea of diversity and inclusion in our workplaces. I'm blessed to be a part of Springer Nature, where that is a very stated, mandated, sort of thing that we bring upon ourselves when we commit to being employees at Springer Nature. It's a very diverse group I work with, and women, especially, are leaders. You'll be very happy to know in our part of the profession and business, if I were to call it that. So earlier in my life, in many of the newsrooms that I have served, I have no hesitation in admitting that I have really faced a lot of inequality in terms of how women journalists or women reporters were treated to being given beats. So I'll explain that a bit. In journalism, you have several areas that you cover. So somebody covers education, somebody covers health, somebody covers politics, another person may cover finance or Bollywood or fashion or films, etc. So many newsrooms in this country still have this skewed perspective of who can cover what. So for hard beats like politics or finance, it would be a male dominated bureau. For softer beats like health or education or even science, there are not many science bureaus in this country. I really don't know of more than one who have a bureau, so-called science bureau. So these beats are generally reserved for the women. And uh, I've had a tough time negotiating with my bosses at one point of time to let me go to cover the Kabul war. It was a mixed team, and I used to be a general beat reporter, not a science reporter at that point of time, which was a great thing because it gave me such a wonderful experience of having covered politics and finance and sports, the Indo-Pak matches in Eden Garden, or even Bollywood, interviewing Shah Rukh Khan or Sachin Tendulkar, or so you had the whole host of things to cover, and so you had so much to learn from all of these beats as well. So I had a tough time negotiating around that, around those kinds of male-dominated beat specific coverage or dedicated fields that were given to men. Um, Having said that, at Press Trust of India, which was my sort of learning ground and gave me the biggest exposure to all the beats that I can very proudly call my first learning ground and launch pad, really. There, I got the opportunity among a vastly male-dominated bureau. There were 12 reporters, and I was the only woman reporter, and I got the opportunity to cover the 1999 super cyclone in Orissa, which was a massive, massive story. I got to cover the disaster Indian Ocean tsunami in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and so I can't complain of being left out of those mega stories when they were evolving. At the same time, I can't complain to being the steering person for the coverage of the pandemic of our lifetimes, the COVID-19 pandemic. And I am, if you have seen Nature India, and if you have, we have curated some of the best. I shouldn't be bragging about it, but I think it's one of the best curated contents, which doesn't take sides, is not biased, and it scientifically has a backbone of evidence-based reportage, if you will, on Nature India. And so all of that has come to me even when I have been of a certain gender. So I really can't complain too much about being in the forefront of these coverages.
Dr. Thanya?
Yeah. Ma'am, can we move to next question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Just one of the participants, Shanas Kiran, she want to know about the solution for the ethical value. We have the ethical value of researchers towards publishing is under stress and competition. So it's undergoing the deploy. So what are the solution for overcoming this type of stress and competition? Ethical value.
Yeah, I don't really understand the question.
Ma'am, this is the ethical value of researchers are under threat due to stress and competition. So they want to know what is the solution, what are the solution for overcoming this thing. Maybe due to the promotion or for the PhD publications regarding that. So they may be making.
Okay, I now get you. So it's about the mandatory publishing thing that you have to publish to get your PhD through, etc. I think we are in need of a strict change in policy, and sooner the better, around this issue. The policymakers of this country, the people in science administration, I know, are also bothered about this question of mandatory publishing, and whether you should have a couple of publications in order, mandated compulsorily to you in order to get your PhD. That really puts a lot of pressure on you, and many people actually go and publish in predatory journals as well, fake journals as well, and so it really doesn't add value to what you're doing during a PhD level, or doesn't add value to your publications, doesn't add value to what you will do in future as ethical researchers. So I think it's time for us to think about changing those rules of mandatory publishing. I really think you people who are doing PhDs do face a lot of stress because of that. On one hand, it really had a good intention behind it for this kind of a policy to be made in the first place, but I think it's not gone well. It's gone haywire somewhere down the line, and people look at it as something of a burden, as something that needs to be done rather than something they enjoy doing during the process of their PhD. So I'm with you when you say there's a lot of stress, and it poses an ethical question when you want to just go and publish. I don't know a strict answer to that because I do not belong to the science administration, but I can only say that one can advocate as much and make your voices heard to your PIs or your people up in the hierarchy administrations for this kind of.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
The next question is from Asta Jain. She just want to know, media sometimes doesn't show the all story. They just show what they want to. Is there in the same way in the science field also this manipulation occurs? So she just want to compare the media and science regarding this thing.
Well, if you mean the science journalism and media in general, I don't disagree with you when you say that. But manipulation would be a harsh word to use. I can say that this is actually a day-long workshop that I do about the difference between what we think media does and what we think media should do, and what as scientists we know media does. So basically this means that we should really look at the media landscape from a closer perspective. What you know of media houses may not be the complete truth, and so let me give you a small, very brief perspective of how the media operates, and maybe it will warm you up to the realities of media houses. Many times media houses are operating due to under a lot of stress from commerce. So a lot of their activity is actually revolving around commercial success of certain things, commercial success of their channels, commercial success of their newspapers, commercial success of their campaigns, etc. So I'm not saying or forthright rejecting the loftier ideals that media upholds. They are true just as much they were true 10 years back or 20 years back. They still have make a larger chunk of what the media thinks it does or the media wants to do. Many things that are dictated in the media houses are due to the constraints of space as well. So in newspapers, your work as a scientist, your work of say 20 years as a scientist and 25 papers or 30 papers as a scientist comes as a 500-word piece or a 400-word piece. And so the space constraint is really something that you are not aware of. Uh, but the media grapples every day with. So the stories that you finally see in the media are tailored to a certain audience. It's tailored to a certain kind of readability, if you will. And so I really don't blame them for not bringing out your science in its entirety, in its full glory, but the essence. Many times while doing that, many media people or media houses or even science journalists might fail to give the full picture, might just give you just the outline or the skeleton of what you've done. But that might be more than what the readers might be interested in, really. So it's a two-way thing. How scientists approach journalists or media houses also works into how their reports finally come out. So if you have key points to deliver to a journalist or to make sense of when you're talking to a journalist in your interviews, also translates to what appears finally in your media reports. That is one thing. The other thing about media misquoting or manipulating or not giving the true story is that many times there are more than just one person handling your story. So many times you will see a headline that is misleading. Many times you will see there are a couple of words that weren't to your liking in a story. So actually, a reporter report, a sub-editor sub-edits, a copy editor further enhances the story. Somebody might be giving the headline, somebody else might be picking up a picture, doing the picture research, and finally, all of that is happening on a deadline of say a couple of hours or 2-3 hours, you know, and that story is produced. Your work of 20 in a matter of 2 or 3 hours, so you have to really give them that leeway, that what should I say, flexibility of maybe getting your story wrong sometimes.
I have a question from Divya from Dharamshala, Himachal Pradesh. Divya is asking, I just finished MBBS and would like to turn into science journalism. Could you recommend where to start? Should I enroll some great MOOC, that is massive open online courses in offering by Ivy League universities? Does it help? I think Divya's question is more, let us generalize it. Had it been like an MSc student or so, my own students are asking the same questions. I would like to go with the science journalism. So maybe what kind of advice would you give to them?
Yes, so two things here. One is we all know that science journalism actually comes in an interdisciplinary area where you've got to know a little bit of science. May not be everything about everything, all spheres of science, but something about everything. And you've got to be interested in most things. in science. You've got to know where to get what in science and who to approach if you don't understand a concept well or the science behind something well. Having said that, for a medical professional, the area to transition into would be medical journalism, which is a great emerging field in India and, of course, an established field worldwide. We have some great medical journalists, medicine journalists across the world, healthcare journalists, health journalists. In the science sphere, again, MOOCs or free online courses are will lead you somewhere. And I began by starting to tell you about the interdisciplinarity of science and medicine journalism. What is it that makes them interdisciplinary? It is not just the science that you have to understand, but also the art of writing. So it is basically a fine amalgam of these two areas. You not just have to know, you also have to know how to produce it. So one of the things that comes through practice is by reading science journalism pieces or reading medical journalism pieces. So if you would want to really write a book, I would say read 10 books. If you want to write good science journalism, read 10 good science journalists or read 10 good medical journalists. That would be the starting point for me to advocate. As for courses, you can take all of these courses. They would give you some practical knowledge about how things happen, but really the the fun of the pudding, as they say, or the taste of the pudding, as they say. What do they say about the pudding? It's in eating. The fun is in eating. Finally, so the moment you get there and eat the pudding, start writing your first sentences, you will know that however number of courses or MOOCs you have done, you get the jitters when you actually come down to your keyboard to start writing your first piece. So I would say read copiously, write minimally, start writing small, not very complicated things, and not in a complicated manner. Start writing simply and really continue writing simply. That would be the essence of what would be. And as far as courses are concerned, I think one of the best free online courses are an explainer on the World Federation of Science Journalists website, WFSJ. It is a module of 10 or 12 lessons that you can take of understanding what science journalism is all about, how to do it, what are the big breaking stories, how you can develop a nose for news, etc. So I think I can recommend that.
Over to Dr. Tanya.
Sir, do we have some more time? Yeah, we should wind up. So Felix,
I think we can have last questions. One
okay.
each question, so then we can.
Okay, fine, sir. So, ma'am, there is one question from Lovely Gupta. She just want to know what is the way of selection of research articles by the scientific journals? She just want to know about the how the journals are selecting the articles for publication in their journal.
I got you. So here we are talking about the process of peer review, and I should give a disclaimer that I'm not attached to any kind of peer review at Nature India or at Nature Research. So my job is, if you open a copy of Nature, you will see the front half and the back half. The back half has your peer-reviewed manuscripts. The front half has reviews, commentaries, opinions, research highlights, things like those, which are more review-like things, more opinion-like pieces. I work on the front half, if you will, of Nature India. it's the magazine style things that we do. So but from my colleagues, and you may ask that question to Magdalena Skipper, the editor-in-chief of Nature, when she comes in here, about what goes into the selection of peer-reviewed articles, how they make the selection of manuscripts. She will be a better person to handle that question. I can tell you how we select our news stories, what makes your science newsy to us, and that is one of the things that makes it relevant to us, is the relevance of your science. How is it going to impact humanity at large, people on the street, people of this country and worldwide? So really, how impactful is that science in terms of its reach, its translation, its relevance, its uniqueness, its human angle, its sometimes great pictures make great stories. So we might pick some stories which have great pictures. Sometimes the newsworthiness of the authors themselves. So if it's a high impact author, we generally go with those stories also. Uh, so yeah, really some of those things go into deciding what makes a good story.
Okay, my last pick is from Sri Preeti is asking, during the pandemic situation, it might be very difficult to gather scientific information. As a journalist, how is it managed and helps to differentiate between genuine or fake news? I can just extrapolate that Sri Preeti's question till further about the high profile retractions as well. You know that New England Journal of Medicine as well as the Lancet. So yeah, so what is your opinion about these matters?
Yeah, I know. So as I mentioned during my talk, something that we are very passionate about is to tell the story of evolution of science, and to tell really what goes into making a piece of scientific evidence. So the rigor of science, what makes science what it is. In doing so, we many times pick up stories which have appeared in preprints, which is a new area of coverage really. During the pandemic, it has seen a rise. Many more preprint papers have been picked up than what we as editors would have picked up, say, even 6 months back. So we always pick preprint papers with a lot of caution, especially because they are yet to, as you all know, undergo peer review. And during the pandemic, many people and many journals really slipped on that count, and picked up a lot of things that were not peer reviewed yet from preprint servers in reporting science. And many also picked up stories which you mentioned, articles which you're mentioning in NEJM and Lancet. I don't want to really blame them for doing what they did in the interest of the evolution of science. They picked up what they knew as current knowledge. The methods, of course, were flawed, and the publication of those papers was fast tracked, as we know, just as much as we know that a lot of science is being fast tracked during COVID times. So yes, that was a slip, but it is not a rule. It's just the exception to the rule. And I think as science editors and as journalists, uh, we we really tread with caution while looking at papers, while hearing scientists even. I've had many scientists send me their papers on COVID-19, preprint papers, otherwise saying, here's a great paper you might want to come. And here's something we published, not just on peer review, also on proper journals, and we have had to refrain from publishing a lot of that stuff, primarily because we have had to exercise our own editorial, constraints, or knowledge gathered over the years or experience to to understand what is a fake, not really a fake, but what makes for an incremental story or a significant breakthrough in science. And so, yeah, really, it comes with practice and looking at a lot of papers on a daily basis that gives you that kind of grounding as to choose what is what.
Amazing. It's actually, yes, very interesting points which you made, especially retractions are not exactly bad, isn't it? It is more like a self-correcting mechanism for the science. And that's how the science progresses, because people are really retracting when they come to know that they made some mistake. But retractions doesn't happen in predatory journals or pseudoscience. So I think that is actually more troublesome. People, though they know the problem, still they don't retract the matter, isn't it? What do you think? Yeah.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Retractions are really healthy, and to say sorry is never going to hurt anybody. It's only going to make you look like you owned up to your mistakes. So, yeah.
Over to Dr. Dhanya for concluding remarks.
Yeah. So thank you, Mrs. Subhra Priyadarshini, for such a wonderful, what do you say, informative and motivational talk. Rather than talk, it was a discussion. So we came across the role of science communication and its impact on society. We have also learned how to make and prepare science as a story so that it is self-explanatory. And I am sure that our participants gained a lot from your speech. And I think the future, the young science leaders will definitely take your words their home. Thank you so much. And we also thank INIAS and especially the participants. They are, I have seen this 1200 participants are still watching from morning to the evening. Definitely the number gets reduced, but still they are live streaming. They're watching the live streaming. So thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks a
you for
lot,
having
Dr.
me.
Priya. Yes, thanks a lot, Priyadarshini, and it's really wonderful to have you here with us. And yeah, and especially I totally enjoyed whatever you said about the, your own personal vignettes and experiences that you actually went through, and your own life story is really inspiring. And yes, science communication, you have highlighted the importance of science communication in fighting the fake news. I'm really happy that you did. And we have covered lots of questions this session. I'm really thankful to you for accepting our invitation and joining in our session. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Has been a pleasure. Thank you.
I would like to say a few words about our next session. So next session starts tomorrow, exactly at 11 o'clock by Professor Ramakrishna Ramasamy. And he's a very well-known speaker. He's a very, quite an interesting it's always a pleasure to listen to his stories. And he's going to share about his own life story as a science leader. So come back at 11 o'clock tomorrow. Yes. So yeah, have a nice day. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.